So good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. My name is PP David Ackerman. I will be filling in for past President Junjun Dairit as the moderator. At this juncture, let me just read for everyone's benefit that please share the slide. For our Zoom house rules, number one, please be advised that microphones of non-program participants will be muted to help keep the background noise to a minimum. Number two, may we request the visiting Rotarians and guests to please type in the comment box your name, your club or affiliation, or the RC Makati Rotarians who invited you to participate in this meeting so we can properly acknowledge you later in the program. Third, for our open forum, after the talk of the speaker, in case you want to ask a question, please use the raise hand button or simply notify us by typing in the comment box. Alternatively, you may want to type in your question and we will try to accommodate it during the Q&A. Lastly, please do not leave yet after the response of our President Peter, as we will have our group photo op with our speaker. And that's it. So for now, let us call our very dear PVP, Perfect Vision President Peter Manzano, to call this meeting to order.
Thank you, PP David. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, Governor Chacha Camacho, our lovely aunts and guests. I now call the 17th regular meeting of the Rotary Club of Makati to order.
Thank you very much, President Peter. May we now call on President-elect Louis Asioche for the invocation.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, this past week was very challenging to most of us. We had a slew of calamities that seemed to have made our islands a revolving door for destruction. For each typhoon that goes out, another would come in, bringing a terrible swath of destruction on your people who have barely risen from a recent calamity, only to be greeted by another unwelcome intruder. Our nation's resilience continues to be touted as a Filipino virtue, but please teach our national leaders that resilience is not an excuse for short-sightedness, lack of preparedness, if not absence by our leaders. Make our leaders understand that a call to resilience is not a magic incantation that they can always summon in times of calamities. That is why we come to you with urgent prayers to calm our hearts, heal our minds, so that we can maintain our mental equanimity and fortitude to emerge from this darkness with renewed hope. For even as these typhoons have passed, we still have to contend with the ever-present scourge of the COVID-19, which continued to bookend these natural calamities. Father, you are our refuge and our rock. We call on you to help us in these trying times, as many of us are full of worries. Wipe our tears and remove the fears in our hearts. Grant us strength and courage when difficulties, challenges, and problems seem insurmountable. Comfort those who are grieving because of the loss of loved ones, properties, or livelihood. We pray that you calm the storm in our lives. Amen. In the name of the Father, and Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, P.E. Louie. Ngayon, ilagay po ang ating kanang kamay sa kaliwang dibdib at sabay awitin ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Now, for those who are familiar with the song, please, RC Makati Rotarians, let us all sing lively the RC Makati hymn.
We're the Rotary Club of Makati, and together we stand proud. We are leaders with integrity, always ready to serve humanity, always living by the four-way test, building goodwill and peace along the way, giving hope to the world. We're the Rotary Club of Makati, prepared to aid our fellow men. As true Rotarians we live to lead. We believe in service above self, and this is why we succeed. We're the Rotary Club of Makati, and together we stand proud. We are leaders with integrity, always ready to serve humanity, always living by the four-way test, building goodwill and peace along the way, giving hope to the world. We're the Rotary Club of Makati, giving hope to the world. The Rotary Club of Makati.
Okay. Now, for every Rotarian, we should all know this by heart. The credo, the four-way test for the things we think, say, or do. Please, if you can repeat after me, please do. The first, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned?
Fair to all concerned.
Build goodwill and better friendship. And lastly, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Ladies and gentlemen, the four-way test. So we would like to, first of all, greet our birthday celebrators and our wedding anniversary celebrators. Today is November 17. We would like to greet a very happy birthday to Johnny Ang. Of course, 2 days from now is our Mr. Back-to-Back Rotarian of the Year, Director Chris Ferrareza. On the 22nd of November, we'd like to greet a very happy birthday to and Cecil Dairit. Next, we have wedding anniversaries. Congratulations and happy anniversary to Ronnie and Menchu Concepcion on November 21. Also, the same date, November 21, David and Alexa Aboites. Happy wedding anniversary. Okay. Next, I will be basing on the list that the Chief of Staff has sent me. We would like to welcome with open arms our guests for today. Rotarians, let us welcome number one, First Anne Pam Manzano. Rotarians, please give a warm round of applause to First Anne Pam. We also have here Anne Marilu Alejandro, Nelly Benzon. Hello, Nelly. Of course, I just said hi to Jean Chavez. Next, we also welcome former Lady Yvonne Kwan and Anne Lu Lim Hoko. We will also welcome beside me Anne Machet Ackerman, who is resting here in St. Luke's, and your prayers will be much, much appreciated for my lovely wife. Of course, please let us also welcome District Governor Chacha Camacho, our Perfect Vision Governor. For the Perfect Vision Presidents, let us welcome PVP Loreto Samaniego of RC Las Piñas Camino Real. From RC Makati Ayala Triangle, let us welcome PVP Angeli Gernamal. I hope I did not mispronounce your name, PVP Angeli. From RC Makati Central, PVP Ed Garma. From RC Makati Metro, hello, PVP Mark Wilhelm. Also, let us welcome from RC Makati Northeast, PVP Christy Blandina Aldave. And the next person I'm about to welcome is my classmate from CMP. I'm guessing she took the helm again of the presidency. PVP Mina Poliosco. Hi, classmate. Ron, did I miss anyone? Okay, so we have some other guests here. Let me continue on with my list. We also welcome from RC Makati Poblacion, PVP Fernan Mabanta. Also from RC Puerto Princesa, PVP Lolita Moraga. Now we welcome our guests, Galarita Aurelia. We also welcome Corazon de la Paz Bernardo. We welcome Erica. Is this Erica? Erica Capeding. Welcome Drieza Castillo. Charlotte Cruz. Is this our district officer, PP Charlotte Cruz? Also, Baby Doble and Miss Faye. There's no surname here. Nevertheless, we welcome you here at RC Makati. We also welcome Mayet Naval and SAG Misha Ruiz of RC Taguig West. Ron, did I miss anyone? Okay, so I have gotten the go signal and clearance. I believe we have welcomed all our guests. Now, RC Makati Rotarians, let us properly and officially welcome our dear guests and Rotarians from all across the globe with the welcome song. Oh, do we have a welcome song? We don't anymore. Okay, so welcome everyone. Now we turn over the mic to President Peter Manzano for his President's Time. President Peter.
Okay na. Thank you, PP David. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and our lovely aunts and guests. Here's the price of the goings on in our club. We have been busy the past 2 weeks doing relief operations to the areas gravely affected by the 3 strong typhoons that hit our nation. 2 weeks ago, we sent 200 packs of relief goods to the town of Claveria, Cagayan, in partnership with the Perfect Vision President Lalaine Opiana of RC Makati, San Miguel, as they were flooded by Typhoon Quinta. We also went on a 2-day relief mission to Camarines Sur and Albay on November 4 to 5, where we delivered over 1 million worth of goods to over 3,000 families in 4 towns, working with a number of partner organizations. Last Wednesday, we had 2 venues. First was in Minalaba, Camarines Sur, in partnership with the Office of the Vice President and the Lions Club of Naga. Second was in Barangays Peñaranda and Puro in Legazpi City, Albay, in partnership with the Sagip Kapamilya program of ABS-CBN and RC Metro Sorsogon. On Thursday, we also had 2 venues. First was in Ginubatan, Albay, with ABS-CBN as partner, and second was in Barangay Gapo in Kamalig, Albay. Before heading back to Manila on the evening of November 5, we paid a visit to Ateneo de Naga University to turn over to Ateneo de Naga President, Father Robert Rivera, our donation of 200,000, including the 100,000 from PDG Sid Garcia, for the repair of the university which was damaged by the typhoon. The following day, November 6, Friday, we did relief missions in Bay Laguna and Batangas City, together with past President Junjun Dairit, where we distributed a total of 682 relief packs. We were joined in Bay by members of RC Bay, led by President J.C. Manas, for goods distribution in 3 sites. In the afternoon, we proceeded to Batangas City, where we gave out our relief packs in 2 sites, in coordination with RC Downtown Batangas City, led by President Kenneth Izon. Last week, on November 13, we conducted our relief operations in partnership with ACTOR, the League of Filipino Actors led by Miss Angel Locsin, delivering 300 food packages, bottled water, and sandals to the families affected by the Super Typhoon Ulysses and who were temporarily sheltered at the Concepcion Elementary School in Marikina. Now, fully cognizant of the dire and difficult situation in evacuation centers, especially given the health protocols under the prevailing COVID-19 scheme, we devised a way to bring ready-to-eat meals to evacuees. So we tried to get quotations from those who pack ready-to-eat meals. However, the price given to us was very prohibitive. So we decided to cook the meals ourselves and launched the RC Makati Paul Harris Kitchen on November 13, a Saturday. With the help of our Rotaractors, we bought our supplies, contacted Stepping Stone for us to use their training kitchen, and prepared the meals. The packed meal consists of a cup of rice, 1 hard-boiled egg, and 1 main dish, longanisa, hot dog, spam, or our special Paul Harris fried chicken. In our 3-day cooking activities, we're able to produce and serve more than 1,600 meals to affected families in 3 sites. First, at the UP Arboretum and Barangay Tumana in Marikina on November 14. Second was in Casiglahan Village in Rodriguez, Rizal on November 15. And these 2 sites, and these 2 days, they were in partnership with concerned artists of the Philippines in support of UP's Bayanihan Alay sa Sambayanan. Of course, that was courtesy of the call by our esteemed speaker for today, Dr. Pagaduan-Lopez. And the third was yesterday, November 16, in a community near Provident Village in Marikina on the recommendation of ABS-CBN Foundation. Now, clearly our original budget of 1 million disaster relief fund after our relief operations for Super Typhoon Rolly was not enough. So the board has approved to allocate an additional 1 million funding, making it a total of 2 million to support our relief effort for the victims of Typhoon Ulysses and other typhoons that may come in the months ahead. In response to the latest cries for help, this time from Cagayan Province, we have bought 1,400 bags of relief goods and 700 sets of mats and blankets to be transported to Tuguegarao City and to other relief sites in the province of Cagayan. We shall be departing Manila tonight with distribution scheduled for tomorrow morning and the day after. Now, as usual, many of our members opened their hearts and responded to our gentle appeal for help, enabling us to raise an additional resources of more than 1 million as of today in cash and in kind, making our relief operations budget to more than 3 million. We thank those who contributed to our disaster relief fund. Of course, Arthur Antonino, George Barcelon, Ann Jojo Borromeo, Vic Floresca, PDG Sid Garcia, Director Eddie Galvez, Rick Gindap, Mr. Higinio Macaraeg, IPP Bimbo Mills, PP Tito Panlilio, Andrew Prieto, PP Carlo Rufino, Taba Samson, Rodrigo Segura, PP Sani Tambunting, Mr. Edgardo Caparas, Andy Manyala, P. Louis Asioche, Wash Lu, Ann Yvonne Kwan, BP Chito Cantada, Manny Pajernos, Karina Amparo, Tessie Amparo, Ralph Galvez, and Jean Chavez, PDG Pep Benson, and those who donated who want to remain anonymous. So again, thank you very much to our very, very generous members, aunts, and friends. That's all I have. PP David, back to you. Nandiyan na siya.
Dave,
David, you have no audio.
David, you have no audio.
Hello? Hello?
oh, now you've got it.
Ron?
You're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now you're okay.
Okay, so again, thank you so much, President Peter, for outlining how RC Makati and its Rotarians handled their affairs amidst all of these unfortunate events plaguing our country for the past few weeks and days. Before I proceed any further, I'd like to just give a recognition where it's due. Charlotte Cruz meant Raed Charlotte Cruz. She is the current Rotary Academy Executive Director. Warm welcome, PP Charlotte. So now,
Dave,
I'm going to pass on the mic to our introducer, President-elect Louis Asioche. President-elect Louis.
Thank you, past President David Ackerman. It was supposed to be past President Fred Pascual who should be doing the honors of introducing our guest speaker, but due to technical difficulties from his end, I have been tasked to introduce our guest speaker. Our guest speaker truly has impressive credentials, beginning with her being the product of the best state university of the Philippines. Our guest speaker, June Pagaduan-Lopez, has worked for more than 3 decades in various fields on human rights protection, psychosocial intervention in humanitarian emergencies, peace advocacy, humanistic education in medicine, gender and women's rights, trauma, and stress management. After she graduated from medical school in 1976 and after finishing her residency in psychiatry in 1979, Dr. Lopez helped found the Medical Action Group. This is an NGO that provided medical and psychosocial support to victims of human rights abuses in the Marcos regime. Her work on torture victims resulted in the establishment of the Philippine Action Against Torture. At the UP Medical School, she worked for the implementation of a human rights course for medical students, and this is the only one of its kind to be mainstreamed into an undergraduate medical curriculum in the country. Dr. June Lopez was a founding member of the International Rehabilitation Council for Torture Victims. She has trained medical practitioners in the detection, management, and rehabilitation of torture victims and other survivors of political violence, not only here in the Philippines, but in East Timor, Nepal, India, Pakistan, Indonesia, Burma, Cambodia, and Kosovo. She decided to implement the East Timor concept in war-torn regions of Muslim Mindanao, and in 2002, using foreign and local government funds, Dr. Lopez started Balik Kalipay, a psychosocial intervention project for victims of armed conflict. Our guest speaker founded and currently acts as the convener of the Citizens Network for Psychosocial Response and president of the SEC-registered Balik Kalipay Center for Psychosocial Response. In light of the many major natural and man-made disasters that have hit the Philippines in the last decade, Dr. Lopez has been involved in numerous interventions for direct survivors and first responders. As a visiting faculty of the Department of Psychology of the College of Arts at the De La Salle University, Dr. Lopez pioneered the teaching of an elective postgrad course on trauma and mental health and psychosocial support. She is currently serving her second term as an elected expert member of the UN High Commission on Human Rights in the Subcommittee on the Prevention of Torture, which oversees compliance with the optional protocol on the Convention Against Torture that was ratified by 90 state parties in June 2019. Our guest speaker is also the primary author and lead of the Philippine Mental Health Bill, which was signed into law on June 21, 2018. During this COVID pandemic, Dr. Lopez initiated and led the COVID response task force of the outstanding women in the nation's service, raising 100 million pesos in donations for the protection of COVID frontliners. For her outstanding work, Dr. Lopez has received the Leo and Liesel Human Rights Award from the University of Oslo in 1991. She has been nominated to the 2005 Nobel Peace Prize as one of the 1,000 peace women of the world. She was given the 2007 Most Outstanding Psychiatrist for Community Service Award by the Philippine Psychiatric Association. The UP Alumni Association also honored Dr. Lopez with an Outstanding Alumni Award in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest speaker, Dr. June Caridad Pagaduan-Lopez.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much, President-elect
Yes.
President-elect Louie. Binabati ko ang ilang mga Rotarians na kilala ko dyan sa audience. Most notably, somebody who I've not seen for like 25 years maybe, si Rotarian former President ba? Junjun Dairi. And of course, may mga pala akong nandyan ngayon who have been mentioned. Thank you. We have a high school classmate, Attorney Aurelia Galerita, one of the top graduates, top notchers of her own batch in the College of Law of San Beda. And then I have seen the name of Faye Bautista, another psychiatrist, colleague of mine. Masasabi kong kadugo at like-minded psychiatrist. And of course, I have seen the name of my cousin, former SSS President Corazon de la Paz Bernardo. Thank you. May mga pala ako ngayong hapon. Also, thank you, former President Fred Pascual, for this invitation. I must say, you're just 1 or 2 years ahead of me in UP Diliman, and we were both heartthrobs. Ako sa UP Corp sponsors, and ikaw, of course, the famous UP fraternity of Upsilon, and as one of very, very prominent figures in student politics. Of course, I knew you more than you knew me at that time kasi heartthrob din kita noon. I'm not your, as was read, as my profile, and very generously covered everything by Louie. I am not your run-of-the-mill psychiatrist, boring psychiatrist. I must say, I am out of the beaten path. I've done so many things that most people will not do, especially psychiatrists like myself. That explains the awards here and now. The secret is to be a big fish in a small pond. And I am proud because I have not been wrong in my choice of how I want to be as a mental health professional. I've had the honor of being red tagged during my younger years in UP Diliman. And I must say, instead of giving me that chilling effect, it was a kind of red badge of courage that I went to the office of NISA at that time during martial law to present myself and challenge them to give me evidence of my deserving the red tagging at that time. I say this because I think this is a very relevant issue for many of us now, Filipinos, especially those of us who choose to make a difference and be leaders in our community. That not only is it difficult to do and face so many challenges that doesn't seem to stop, just come one after another, but to be at the same time threatened, tagged, labeled, bashed, especially in social media, be the subject of fake news, does not help to keep kind of spirit that we all need to keep in order to save our country and our countrymen. I might be a little irreverent and a little naughty in this talk. I'm known to be that. I remember I gave a talk to the Rotary of Manila, and I did not mince words when I told them of my shock that at this day and age, there is no woman member of the club. Am I still right? Is there still no woman member in the Rotary Manila?
None.
And of course, my good friend, Dr. Rosel Santos, defended the club after my talk. And okay, I said there are reasons. But I have to thank the club for giving me the opportunity to experience an experience of a lifetime by sending me to Marawi to attend to the psychosocial problems of the many members of the community, especially the faculty and students of the University of Mindanao, to give them a talk on mental health and how to cope. So I have to thank Rotarian Rafi Alunan for that, because it was really a very memorable experience. Sorry for that long introduction, but I just want to be informal and also to let you know that I'm not unfamiliar with Rotary. I've given so many talks and have so many Rotarian friends. I've only reached up to being a Rotarian. I've never been invited. But it's enough that Rotary has been quite an important professional partner in my field. I'd like to start my PowerPoint, if I may. Can you see? Can you see now?
Yes.
All right. So I hope with the time left, I know it's not much, but I'd like to share with you what I think the most salient elements of mental health so that we can all stand on the same ground. Then I'd also like to clarify what we mean by resilience and what is the resilience versus the response approach to disasters. Also, I'd like to share the Filipino framework for understanding trauma, coping, and resilience. And of course, while doing that, highlight coping styles and factors that uniquely shape resilience in the Filipino. You know, the title Only in the Philippines came up because at the time that former President Fred texted me about giving this talk, I was looking over some photos of post-Raleigh, which were really very funny photos. And it struck me how Filipinos really cope with something as tragic as a very devastating typhoon. So I chose to title my talk this afternoon, Only in the Philippines, Our Brand of Resilience and Mental Health in the Midst of Calamities. For a background, I'd like to tell you more about where I'm coming from, although the introduction has really very generously informed you of my experiences and where I get what I am going to share with you right now. Our story is a story of several projects started way back in early 2000. The first is the Citizens Network of Psychosocial Response, which is a very informal organization organized sometime post-millennial and Reming. And those were the huge, magkasunod rin, parang Raleigh and Ulysses, magkasunod na disaster sa Bicol, di ba? Milenio and Reming. And then we got called to the all-out war, which was started by President Estrada before it was launched again in early 2004 by former President Gloria. So we organized Balik Kalipay, a psychosocial response to help families dealing with children who have been exposed to armed conflict. And finally, a Peace for Children project, which is this logo here, which was a child-to-child peace advocacy program. We asked children from Manila to write cards to Mindanao children, victims of armed conflict, and give them nice messages of peace. So these were the projects that we launched early in 2000 until mid 2000. And for this, we have eventually evolved a concept and a philosophy of a psychosocial resilience approach to disasters and calamities, whether man-made or natural, which is a resilience approach rather than a response approach. In other words, we would like to strengthen our communities, deal with the onslaught of various kinds of disasters rather than just keep on responding when it happens. This is actually a global call now, the resilience approach. So we build systems in order to strengthen and enhance coping mechanisms of communities, which unavoidably become targets of disasters. We have to admit we are right now the third. We have risen from the fourth rank to the third most calamity-prone country in the world. So our concept is pagbabalik ng kaginhawahan or return to well-being, pagbabalik ng tatag, tapang at kapayapaan ng loob, return to steadfastness, courage, and peace of mind. Very quickly, what have we done after Yolanda? We gave a workshop to those who were first responders in Yolanda, those who were victims of Yolanda, as well as those who were tasked to respond and take care of their own communities. So we used the arts in partnership with the National Commission on Culture and the Arts and PETA. We did creative workshops on creative therapies among musicians, among visual artists, among creative writers, among poets, etc. We were also asked to help process the correspondence of newspapers, major newspapers who responded to Yolanda. These were traumatized, very young correspondents who continued to have nightmares for what they saw and what they had to cover post Yolanda. And then the National Commission on Culture and the Arts asked us to develop programs for grassroots, especially these indigenous peoples in Antique who were also very much victims of the Yolanda typhoon. UNICEF partnered with us. We needed to help the LGUs recover from Yolanda. Those was no less than 100 municipalities where we had to give mental health, psychosocial interventions to no less than mayors, municipal health officers, doctors, who were giving care, who were the first responders, and yet have not been, has not had a chance to receive any kind of support or any kind of processing for their own experiences with Yolanda. So, what is our definition of mental health? According to the WHO, it's a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential. In other words, that we are free, we have the capacity, and that capacity will be nurtured in order for us to gain our full potentials. That we can cope with normal stresses of life. Because there's no such thing as a stress-free life. The sooner we know that, the better for us. It is how to stress-proof our lives. rather than how to avoid stress. Mental health also means being able to work productively and fruitfully. In other words, that we feel contented, satisfied, and proud for what we do, and we find meaning in what we do. And at the same time, because we have this confidence and we have this meaningful existence, we're able to contribute to our own communities. This is the comprehensive definition of mental health. Now, what threatens that kind of state of well-being? Now, we talk about psychosocial trauma because this seems to be the reality of our world today. Psychosocial trauma is a threat to our freedom from fear and anxiety, and therefore our mental health. And we say psychosocial trauma has that capacity to affect our lives and ruin our mental health because it has a ability to provoke terror and powerlessness in our lives, in ourselves. This is the underlying assumption of why psychosocial trauma is such a life-threatening experience. What does it do? Whether it's a natural cause, and we call that calamity, or whether it's human-induced, and we call that atrocity, it has the capacity to terrorize us, completely shock us into thinking catastrophically. And what is a catastrophic thinking? It's a thinking that this is the end of the world. This is it. And we are completely powerless over the situation. And this, of course, invokes crisis. And when this crisis happens in us, there are several ways, there are only several ways we can react to this crisis. One is to fight it. Kung kaya natin, kung mas malaki tayo sa kalaban, then we fight it. Kung malaki yung kalaban, we flee from it. No? But because all these psychosocial trauma are not as simple as they used to be, they are not always things that we can escape from or we can fight. Yun na lang simpleng traffic. No? Ano bang ginagawa natin? Wala tayong magawa sa traffic. We can rage, rant and rage, but wala tayong magagawa. So what do? We can go into road rage, or we can just freeze, which is what is now the usual way of coping. Freeze. Kasi wala tayong maisip na gawin. And yun yung nakakatakot. Kasi we are become numb, we have frozen ourselves into doing nothing. Let's take COVID. No? Baka nakakalimutan natin may COVID pa tayo. Pagkatapos ng Rolly at Ulysses, parang ang daling makalimutan na hanggang ngayon may problema pa tayo sa COVID. And I say, I talked maybe 30 times about COVID on webinars. And I always say, isang pangyayari itong di inaasahan at labis na kinakatakutan. No one ever imagined that something like this could ever happen to us. Not only locally, but globally. And how are we coping with COVID? No? First, we cope with something depending on what it represents. It represents threat to life. So yung takot natin dahil bigla yung mamatay sa COVID. No? It also caused a full shutdown, lockdown of our society, our economy, and therefore it led to a serious threat to our livelihood. how do we cope with this kind of mindset that trauma brings to us? No? There are psychological barriers. Number one, wrong or even fake information or news. Mali o kakulangan sa kaalaman. No? How many of our people, maybe minsan sinasabi ko, mas mabuti pa tayo dito, ang mga mahihirap, yung mga pasaway dito sa atin. Hindi pasaway dahil simpleng matigas ang ulo, dahil hindi nakakaintindi at wala silang choice. Social distancing, paano ka mag-social distancing kung nakatira ka sa isang lugar na ang mga bahay ay 5-10 square meters ang laki at 10 taong nakatira. O wala kang pambili ng mask. Hindi kagaya sa Amerika na na-politicize na yung buong information about COVID. Pangalawa, kawalan ng pakialam. I just don't care. Kasi Hoda, hindi ako magmamask. Karapatan ko hindi magmask, which is unfortunately the kind of thinking you now hear on CNN, how Americans are taking, have politicized, as I said, the COVID issue. And they just don't care because they would rather have their rights respected with the wrong information. Or simple, complete fear. And unfortunately, greed, selfishness. You will not believe this. It was mentioned that we had a COVID response project under the Outstanding Women in the Nation Service. We were able to put together more than 100 million worth of goods and cash. We had the money. We didn't have the goods to buy. And the few suppliers that we could kneel and beg for supplies, niloloko pa kami. Pinadadalahan pa kami ng underspecified or outright unusable masks, gowns, etc. So, ngayon, this is nakakaiyak and this is the real threat. No? Greed and the lack of pakialam at the lack of compassion among our people. So, paikot-ikot yon kung ito yung mananaig. No? The trauma continues, the crisis continues, and the psychological barriers just continue to be huge, to loom over us and seem to be completely unsurmountable. Now, in all those experiences we've had, as I mentioned, armed conflict in Mindanao, natural calamities, we've come, and even managing torture victims during martial law, we've come together as mental health professionals, together with Dr. Hani Karandang, her postgrad students, we came up with a Filipino framework for understanding and assessing resilience in the Filipino. We called it Bilog ng Buhay. And we thought that beyond what you might learn from Western psychology, there are a number of things that are so reflective of our value system that it makes or it equates to how we will deal with a crisis or a traumatic experience. And this paulit-ulit kong ginagamit, including sa mga rape victims ko, including sa mga pasyente kong nakaranas ng violence, and it never fails to work. It helps, it simplifies their understanding of what's happening to them. The bilog ng buhay, kasi we look at them as circles overlapping each other. The first circle is the inner reality of a person. loob. How did you feel during and after that trauma? No? Kadalasan nasabi sa'yo, sobrang takot, sobrang galit, kawalan ng pag-asa. And then later on, if you do this again, especially in Yolanda, because we did this several points in time after the disaster, nagbabago yan. Maya-maya, naiintindihan na namin kung bakit masaya na ako dahil nakita ko yung pagmamahal sa akin ng pamilya ko, may pag-asa pala, etc. So I'm now, you can see that there's a huge change in that inner reality or loob. But there are some people who never move on. They continue to harbor that anger, depression, guilt many times. Sometimes they blame themselves. In Yolanda, that we had so many stories of people who could not deal with the guilt of having lost a loved one because nabitawan nila in the floods. I had a woman, a grandmother, who could never forgive herself kasi nabitawan niya yung kanyang apo. So we need to deal with that inner reality of the person. The second question in the assessment is, how does this affect your relationship with other people? Now, we don't like to say simply relasyon in Tagalog. We say kapwa. You know why? Kasi in the Filipino sense, it's not just the other when we say relationship. We're talking of our identity in the other. Napaka-importante sa atin yung ano yung sinasabi na ibang tao kasi we draw our own sense of who we are from what other people think we are. So kapwa is such a huge concept in the Filipino psyche. And I have rape victims whose inner reality or feelings about the rape is not as bad as their feeling of shame, of fear of being rejected, fear of being blamed because they were raped. So kapwa is such a huge element in the way a Filipino deals with trauma or crisis. And finally, we have meaning and empowerment. We ask the survivors, what gave you strength? What took your strength? Paano ka nang hina? In the millennial processing that we did in Quezon, a woman, an old woman who was considered a hero of her barangay because she saved so many just by putting her out her arm from the window of her house and grabbed people who were passing by being flowing with the floods. And you ask her, anong nagpalakas sa iyo? Anong nagbigay sa iyo ng lakas ng loob? Doktora, pagmamahal ko sa mga kapitbahay ko. Pagtingin ko sa sarili ko na hindi ako mabubuhay kung wala akong gagawin. You know? And the meaning that she gave, that God saved her to save other people. So when we put together these stories in this way, we begin to understand, even assess, the effectivity or the weakness of the person's coping. And we call coping as pagdadala. And the impact of trauma is what we call dating. Anong dating sa'yo ng pangyayaring ito? So, translating that in the Filipino language, number one, and secondly, putting it in the Filipino psychology context makes it easier for people to assess themselves and for us to understand them. So going back to COVID, if COVID were seen as a mental health concern, not just a physical concern, then our approach to the holistic management of the COVID situation should consider changing how people look at this pandemic. not simply a source of takot, not simply governed by wrong information or fake news, but simply governed by their problems of income and fear of death. We'd like to help them look at COVID in a more positive way. So, ano yung mga positive way na yun? Halimbawa, hamon sa katatagan ng pamilya at lipunan. Dahil sa lockdown, nagkasama-samang pamilya, mas nagkakaigihan, nagkakausapan. May mga problema rin na maaaring madulot ng pagsasama na 24 oras, pero kailangan harapin natin at pag-usapan kung ano yung mga problemang yon. Isang paalala ng sangkatauhan, God's message to all of us, what we're doing to our environment, and what will happen to us if we don't change our ways. Or simply strengthening our faith in God. So, nasa sa atin, and that's what we encourage people. Go think of the meaning that will help minimize your fear, minimize your cynicism, minimize your greed and selfishness. Therefore, we move on to what we call hinahon or calm. And to achieve that hinahon or calm, one needs to be mindful. Kung hindi tayo nag-iisip, kung araw-araw iniisip natin na lang, anong bibilin kong susunod sa online? Kasi meron akong stock ng toilet paper, meron akong stock ng canned goods, meron akong kailan na ako magpapagupit. No? Yan ang mga joke natin, mga middle upper class women. Hindi na tayo nakakapagpamanicure. Kung hindi tayo lalampas doon sa ganong klaseng pag-iisip, we cannot help ourselves, much less can we help others. So all in all, pagdadala, that's what we mean. Coping, and because of our resilience, we are able to cope. There are 3 F's I mentioned. Fight. Hopefully, we have a positive side to fighting, and the vaccine is our #1 way of fighting this COVID. Flight, escape. Stay home. Avoid infection, or some people even travel and go somewhere where they think they'll feel safer. Or freeze. Now, this is the one that we don't want to happen. And some people have just frozen, and this day-to-day existence of becoming a writer called it a spore. No? When plants are thrown in a situation that is not friendly to their existence or growth, they can become spores. And human beings can become spores also, just to survive. But there are many of us who become spores forever. Spores is not a life. It's not a living condition. It is just to freeze everything and help us recover. Like a lockdown, we want to flatten the curve in COVID. We want to give frontliners, doctors, nurses, hospitals, a chance to recover. That's why there is a lockdown. And this is not simply complete lack of importance of the economic impact of lockdowns. We've heard Michigan is declaring a 3-week lockdown because COVID in the US has reached only a couple days ago levels that are the worst in the entire world. And my 4th F is face. What do we do to face? And my 4th F is face. What is behind our ability to face rather than flee, fight, or freeze? First, it's the nature of the traumatic event. Kaya ba natin? No? And COVID because thankfully of the advances of science, it's a situation we can cope with. If we just believe in those who are giving us the truth and the right information. So, each event is unique. Iba-iba ang dating sa bawat tao. As I already mentioned, the meaning of the event to us is a very powerful determinant kung paano tayo magko-cope doon. Kung sobra tayong takot, ganun tayo magko-cope. Kung nakikita natin ito as more as an opportunity rather than a crisis, then we will also be able to cope better. Problem with psychosocial trauma is it shatters our sense of safety. Right? We've always assumed that this world is safe. Suddenly, hindi pala ganun kaligtas itong mundong ito. And it weakens our trust, weakens our interpersonal and social relationships, not only because of the social distancing, but because of the survival mode that we are pushed into. And finally, kung mahina-hina ang faith natin, it makes us question the divine order of things. Bakit hinahayaan ng Diyos mangyari ito? O bakit hindi ito mangyari? Ba't hindi ma-COVID si ganito? No? Or some people, bakit hindi na natuluyan sa COVID si Trump? Or bakit hindi makatuluyan sa COVID yung mga taong dapat mawala sa mundo? I am guilty of that sometimes. But again, with stronger faith, we can only say, only God knows. So, the nature of the traumatic event is one important factor that will determine your ability to cope and be resilient. The next is task orientation. A task-oriented person can focus on the here and now, at the moment. When you need to survive, you can think of only what you need to do at that very moment. Hindi tumatakbo ang isip mo kung, naku, paano na yung ganito ko. A task-oriented person is able to organize his thoughts and be focused on the present. At the same time, task-oriented person will recognize the need to physically survive that particular challenging period of his life. And finally, be able to find that calm and mindfulness that requires. You know, I have processed a group of telecom experts who were involved in a drowning incident during their summer outing. The most effective person who organized the rescue and took care of those who unfortunately died was not the leader of the group. It was someone else. And the best swimmer in the group had the worst reaction because he was not able to save anyone. So again, it depends on how you see the incident or experience and how focused you can stay during that given time. And then mindfulness. When I say focus comes with mindfulness. First of all, I heard this from a YouTube video on death. There's nothing certain in this world other than birth and death, she said. At the same time, the only thing that is in our control is our choice of how to react to something that was not predicted or something that we cannot control. The power of certainty is the power of our intellect and our soul, and it's our power of choice of how to react. So learning to focus is equivalent to being mindful, at the same time being able to choose how we will react to a given situation. The fourth factor, guess. These were the pictures I was looking at when Fred texted me about being a speaker here this afternoon. I was just really laughing over these pictures. Humor. That's what we're very well known for, sometimes to a fault. I have Westerner friends. Sometimes I send these kind of pictures and they just can't relate. They're shocked that I'm sending them this kind of pictures post-disaster. But that's really unique to the Filipino. But of course, as I said, to a certain degree, but not to a point where it becomes really out of place or even very, very, shall we say, shocking or already very disrespectful of the situation we're in. So that's what the Filipino is. That's what we're about. I'd like to end with this image. And no matter what, compassion and care for our community, I think this is the most unique thing in being a Filipino. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pagaduan-Lopez. I believe we have a little over 10 minutes for the Q&A. So we now open the floor for questions. As I said, please feel free to type in your questions followed by your designation and name and designation in the chat box. And this is the way that we can filter everything. But first in line is President-elect Louis Asioche. Please ask your please ask your question personally.
Okay, thank you, Past President David. Dr. June, thank you for such an interesting talk. I just have a question. A month or 2 months ago, the Undersecretary of Environment, in fending off criticism to the Dolomite Beach, says that that is good for mental health, the presence of Dolomite. Now, I don't know, does he have basis in saying that? Is that a psychosocial response at the community level? Or is it just a frivolous off-the-cuff remarks, Doctora? Is it really good for mental health?
Sorry to say, but I think it's an unthinking remark. By the way, I live across the Dolomite Beach because I live on Ross Boulevard. And I have walked over. And the site, even before Ulysses, the site of that beach with all its garbage, lahat ng mga debris na nandun, hindi ka matutuwa. I don't know what he's talking about, but I never found my mental health being improved by the site, the unsightly site of a 300 million project, which could have been spent to prepare for very badly needed COVID assistance and now our disaster damages. So, anong klaseng priorities and this is where I mentioned in my PowerPoint yung kawalan yung pakialam at the very least, or pagka masarili, nasaan yun? And that's to me the more fearsome mental health problem that I see brewing in this country, that we're becoming a society that tolerates this kind of thinking, this kind of selfishness and I don't know. I would not like to be more political in this talk, but certainly it's fearful to me that I'm looking more at our population. How long and how much more will we accept this kind of thinking?
Thank you for that, Doctora. Now, before waiting for the other questions, if I could also take this opportunity to ask my own question, Doctora.
Yes.
And my question is, how effective, in your opinion, is the e-consult of Cardinal Santos and other medical facilities? Because ever since the COVID, it has been more impersonal. For psychiatric patients, do you think, Doctora, this trend of online consults will do the trick? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. You know, before COVID, I was one of those that really did not have any inclination or did not believe in what we call telemedicine and psychiatry, telepsychiatry. Before COVID, most Commonwealth countries already have it. The UK, Canada, Australia, and I was very critical of it because I am of the psychoanalytic, psychodynamic Freudian background, which places a lot of importance on one-on-one human, actual human physical encounter for us to be therapeutic or for us to help patients. But we had no choice. And now we just have to have the proper guidelines. And I can say proudly that for us, we are lucky psychiatrists because we don't need to do physical examinations for our patients. And therefore, I only need to be myself and to be my compassionate, caring, and listening person as a psychiatrist to make that e-encounter or that Zoom session work. But it's very difficult if you were, let's say, a neurosurgeon, a neurologist, pulmonologist that needs to do physical examination. I have a sister that just died last month, and it was hell. I can tell you, I can commiserate. You are now in the hospital, I think, and
Yes, I am.
really made medical care most difficult practice nowadays. I can tell you, but I find myself as a psychiatrist lucky that somehow we are able to maintain our, as I said, our therapeutic capacity, even online.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate your answer, Doc. While waiting for, okay, here. So we have a question from Jomi Aguilar. Good afternoon. Let me just read it. Good afternoon, everyone, and especially to Dr. June. I was a former graduate student of Dr. June. I do not have, he says, from DLSUM, and took her MHPSS class. Maybe you can just enlighten us what that means. I do not have a question
Mental health
really.
and psychosocial support.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Jomi Aguilar says, I do not have a question really, just a comment that Dr. June never fails to profoundly explain what's psychosocial mental health processing is in relation to our culture of resiliency.
Thank you very much. Mga palak yata yung mga yan. Mga estudyante ko.
For good reason, Doc, for good reason. Another one from Jody Villanueva. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jody, a new recruit of Taguig West, Rotary Club of Taguig West. Dr. June, how do we stay mentally healthy when dealing with people who seem to have lost the ability to empathize with other people? I admit to finding myself feeling frozen by a lot of things these days. That's Jody Villanueva, Doc.
Very difficult question. But you see, the only thought that helps me through dealing with people who are, hopeless, hopeless in the sense that they are not capable of listening or being open. You just have to tell yourself that uh, you don't judge them, but just tell yourself that if you've said what you said and it's not up to you to accept what you are saying. A lot of times I say to my patients, drama nila, hindi mo drama. Drama mo, drama mo. So it's a matter of being able to let go and staying around people who gives you that support, that respect, and that sense of trust and credibility. Otherwise, kung hindi nakakatulong sa'yo, hindi mo kailangan ipaglaban o tiisin. No? Right now, even politics has become a wedge between friends. There was a nice post on Facebook that was said, forget about Trump and Biden. They don't even know you. So that's true. Sometimes we take each other too seriously. I get bashed, but only by a few trolls from the other side. But we just take that with a grain of salt and move on. Because we cannot judge. I think that's the most important message to yourself. You can never judge somebody, no matter how much you know them.
Perfectly said. Thank you for that very pragmatic answer. It really does make full sense, Doctora. Now, from a person you do know personally as well, this is from PP Junjun Dairit. In psychiatric sessions, isn't it important to simultaneously monitor physical parameters during the consultation, such as BP, heart rate, etc.? So this is like a follow-up to my question. And he also says, if these are important, then online consultations would be handicapped, would they not?
Well, Junjun, as I said, kaming psychiatrists and psychologists are lucky enough not to be dependent on physical examination. Even in my own practice before COVID, I must admit I've not had to use a stethoscope for maybe like 25 years of my medical practice. If the history presents to me information that warrants a full medical examination, then I refer the patient. So I have that luxury, but I must really tell you, I commiserate with my medical colleagues because there are many of them right now. Even I have someone who shares my clinic in the Cardinal Santos Medical Center, who is a pulmonologist. And she has to risk, being a frontliner, she has to risk herself because she cannot get away from not having physical contact from her patients. And on my part, you cannot make me go back to Cardinal at this point in time because of the risk to myself. So it's really, really very difficult.
Okay. Unless otherwise informed by President Peter or the COS, we have 1 or 2 questions left because of time constraints. So we will have President Peter Manzano's question. And he says, how do you think are our millennials and our Generation Z's coping with this pandemic?
Huge question. That's a subject of one whole webinar. Well, you know, there are so many tasks, and I have patients at that age who are breaking down, requiring more sessions with me because of a number of concrete things. One, it's very, very stressful to go to do the online classes and the kind of demands that is put on them, and how that is so not so uniformly going well, because it depends on the faculty, the teacher. I have a patient who is terrified of one faculty who thinks that his only job is to present a PowerPoint lecture and not be asked questions. So this is a new thing to our young ones, the pressure, the academic pressure. And then in one webinar we ran on the COVID and the family. There are 3 R's I call them: rules, roles, and resources of the family. The rules of needing to that is involved in needing to be together almost 24 hours, when before you probably are together 4 to 6 hours lang, and how that changes the life of everybody, changes the life of the millennial, the young ones, and the parents who are also work from home. And the rules, who washes the dishes, yan ang mga nakukuha kong mga storya na napag-aawayan. The roles, who goes out to go to the bank, who goes to the supermarket, those are also sources of conflict. And then the resources. Now our millennials, our young people, are all subjected to this, and it's also new to them, and also so new to parents, to people like us, because it's never been we have never been in a situation like this. So I think the only way to deal with this is to improve communication. When, as before, we can be very complacent, we hardly talk to our children, especially those our XYZ, the millennials generation, who will be in their rooms on their device, their tablets, their computers, and we are on our own devices, and we think that just because we're in the same house, we're doing fine. That's not true. It's not so. And right now, I have fear of so many websites that have cropped up. There are websites for people who like to kill themselves. There are websites who like to kill somebody. All these are now available on social media. How are we monitoring this?
Thank you, Doctora. Before we proceed to the final question, may I just remind all participants in this Zoom chat to please stay put, as we will have one final photo op after President Peter's response. So may I just read the final question from President Mark Wilhelm of RC Makati Metro. Hi, Dr. June. We have a family friend at Santos, at Cardinal Santos, he means, Dr. Lourdes Ignacio. Would you say telepsychiatry is the best way to reach people who do not have the capacity to actually attend sessions, since most of the psychiatrists are in the hubs and not in the provinces? And can this also help the people who do not have the financial ability to pay?
First of all, Dr. Lourdes Ignacio is my mentor. She's my professor. She is our pioneer in community psychiatry. So I say she knows what she's saying. And for the longest time, she believed that remote psychiatry or internet and tele-mentoring are the way to go. And I've long agreed with her when it came to telementoring. And telementoring is using our telecom technology to train people to handle mental health problems in their localities, because there are only 600 psychiatrists in a population of 130 million. So it's true. We cannot populate the entire country enough. So I believed in telementoring, and I have, in fact, supervised, mentored my trainees, social workers who were in Mindanao, post-training. This is the best way, because psychiatry is not a one-shot deal. You just don't learn it overnight or even a week. So we do, and we continue to do telementoring. So before COVID, I only believed in telementoring. I was afraid to use e-calls for clinical work. But now I have no choice. And Zoom, I use Zoom because it affords me real good visual as well as audio access to the patient. We have to content ourselves with that for now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. June. Again, our apologies to the Rotarians who keyed in their other questions, for we are 7 minutes over time. At this juncture, may we please give a warm round of applause, a virtual warm round of applause to Dr. June Lopez for an amazing and insightful meeting speech that she delivered for us. Thank you so much. May we please call on our dear Perfect Vision President, Peter Manzano, for the response and adjournment.
Thank you, Pipi David. We are a country that is most prone to natural hazards and risks of climate change, third in the world, in fact, as pointed out by our speaker, having an average of 20 typhoons that pass through us every year, not to mention our tectonic location within the Pacific Ring of Fire, where we experience an average of 300 earthquakes per year. Just recently, we suffered 3 destructive typhoons, Quinta, Rolly, and Ulysses. Typhoon Ulysses ravaged parts of Luzon, where the damage it has wrought has been compared to that of the 2009 Typhoon Ondoy. And just yesterday, an earthquake was reported with a magnitude of 6.1 of the Richter scale, with its epicenter in Marihatag, Caraga in Mindanao. And as if these yearly calamities that we experience every year are not enough, we were not spared from the worldwide effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our experts say that we will go through 3 phases in this pandemic, and this was earlier confirmed by our speaker. The first phase is the physical health crisis, which we are still going through nowadays. The second phase is the economic crisis, as many businesses will slow down, if not totally shut down, and people will continue to lose their jobs. And the third phase is the mental health crisis, as people try to cope with all the stress this pandemic has caused them. This third phase is seen as a critical phase, as we see people suffering from panic attacks, high level of stress and anxieties. More than a week ago, Reuters reported on a study that about one in 5 or 20% of COVID-19 survivors are likely to be at greater risk of developing mental health problems like anxiety, depression, and insomnia within 90 days. We don't need another study to tell us that we are all suffering from different levels of anxieties caused by this pandemic, as well as the natural calamities that beset our nation every year. And our responses may vary, as explained to us by our speaker: fight, flight, or freeze. So how do we cope with all these calamities? resilience, defined as the ability to recover quickly from difficulties. As a trait, it is one's ability to recover quickly from unfortunate circumstances or illness. One's resilience, however, is not something that is built or acquired overnight. It takes years to develop such ability to adapt and mitigate the hazards and disasters brought about by trying circumstances like typhoons and earthquakes, among others. Just like the bamboo, a symbol for resilience, it took 40 million years of evolution for the bamboo to naturally grow it into one of the most resilient plants in our biological history to be able to withstand the most torrential winds and storms. And yet, the resilience of the Filipino can also be a reflection of how the Filipino people have responded and evolved with the government's policies and actions to these calamities the people suffer yearly. Maybe that's the reason why most recently a netizen had something to say about the resilience of the Filipinos. She said, "Our country has been through so many issues, calamity, pandemic, economy, job losses, and it upsets me so much that people pull out Filipino resiliency as a quick fix. It's definitely something to be proud of. But really, how long are we gonna keep using that to hide the real problem? I feel for our brothers and sisters who are gravely affected by everything that's happening. Our country deserves so much better than this." I know a lot of people share the feeling expressed by the actors and singer, but it's more of an expression of exasperation and disappointment at how our government, past and present, has been responding to the perennial problems that beset our nation. Fortunately for us Rotarians, we act out of our own volition. We initiate and respond with dispatch. We don't wait for government. Unlike the government, we are not bound by bureaucratic rules and political protocols. We only have the four-way test that guide us in our thoughts, words, and deeds. We don't mind who gets the credit. That's how focused we are on the task at hand. We do it because that's who we are, Rotarians, people in action. Besides, who knows, it could be our own way of coping or pagdadala with all the anxieties we are all experiencing brought about by this pandemic and the calamities that we face every year, as our speaker explained earlier. Dr. June, I am happy to inform you that we have set aside funds this Rotary year for a mental health project. We hope we can work together to come out with modules to help our millennials and the Gen Zs cope with stress brought about by this pandemic and other natural calamities that can probably address the issues on rules, roles, and resources as you mentioned earlier. On behalf of the Rotary Club of Makati, our lovely aunts, our district governor Chacha Camacho, the other Rotarians from the different clubs in our district, special to my classmates, the Perfect Vision presidents, our Rotaractors, and all the other guests in attendance, please accept our heartfelt gratitude for taking time and sharing with us today your insights on resilience and mental health in the midst of calamities. Once again, thank you, Dr. June Pagaduan-Lopez. Thank you. And as tokens of our appreciation for your time and service, we shall be giving you a copy of our 50th anniversary coffee table book, which contains our club's 50 years of community service and fellowship, together with a bottle of red wine for you to enjoy while going through the pages of our book. Thank you again, Dr. June Pagaduan-Lopez.
My pleasure, my honor.
Thank you, President Peter. As always, thank you for an amazing response, President Peter. But before I let you adjourn the meeting, perhaps we can let COS Ron first capture our photos. At this juncture, may I please request all participants of the Zoom meeting to switch on your camera. Ron, do the honors.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. One more. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Smile.
Last. One last. 1, 2. Okay.
So that concludes it. President Peter, please formally adjourn the meeting.
Okay, this is a regular meeting of the Rotary Club of Makati is hereby adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. It's
Kasi
so
ano,
nice to see everyone.
You're here. Fred Pascual is here.